The Jake Asman Show will begin shortly. Thanks to all these great Patreon members who help support the show. Get your super chats ready. Jake will be here in just a moment. If you love the New York Jets, this is the place to be. And now, the Jake Asman Show.
In today's show, we're talking about the latest rumors and reports surrounding the New York Jets, their biggest priorities this offseason, and a whole lot more. My guest is Jets beat reporter Brian Costello from the New York Post. A lot to talk about, Jet fans, so let's hit it and get it started.
Man, our Jets are primed for a historic season.
I'm here because I believe in this team. I believe in Costello. I believe in the direction of Joe Douglas and what Coach has done the last couple of years. He's building something special the right way with the right values, the right type of leadership. I'm just here to be the best quarterback I can be, to lead and to inspire the guys around me.
We bleed Jets green each and every day. This is not the same old Jets. We have Garrett Wilson. Let's go. We have Breece Hall. Please subscribe and hit the like button for love. Super Chat, baby. Cut the line. We have Sauce Gardner. We have Quinnen Williams. The Jets bandwagon is loaded. Now it's time to talk all things New York Jets. It's the Jake Asman Show.
Here we go here on a Wednesday. Welcome in, everybody. If you're new to the channel, subscribe on the right-hand side of your screen, and please hit the like button down below. Joining me right now is someone who's covered the New York Jets since 2011. You can read him in the New York Post. He's the co-host of the Gangs All Here podcast. He is Brian Costello, and he joins me now. Brian, always great to get you on. I believe it's the first time I've had you on the YouTube show, so I can't thank you enough for a couple minutes.
No problem. Thanks for having me, Jake.
So obviously, when it comes to the Jets, the offseason is where we as Jet fans typically shine. I know you're going to be in Mobile next week for the Senior Bowl. Is that to you kind of the unofficial start of draft season for Joe Douglas and company?
It is. It's really the start of the offseason in my eyes. Like you have coaching, some staff stuff always happens the first few weeks of January. But it's really it's quiet right now for the most part. There's nobody really working. The coaches are off for a while. It's a quiet time inside the Jets. And then Mobile, it's like, okay, here we go. Basically the start of the 2024 offseason. And that's where, not just evaluating draft prospects, but all the GMs are there. If Joe Douglas is going to make a trade, the talks start there, really. Like if you go back to, I remember the trade up for Sam Darnold, right? That the talk started in Mobile. Like that's kind of where things start percolating. So yeah, it's, here we go.
For you personally, you had the exclusive with Woody Johnson before the Commanders game. You spoke with him and that he made it clear he was retaining Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh. I'm curious, one, what were your big takeaways from that conversation with Woody? And then two, from your perspective, being around this team, was it the right decision to keep both the GM and coach?
Yeah, so it's tough. I think Woody was sort of in the same place that a lot of people analyzing the situation were, right? Like you couldn't make a change. Whether you think it's right or not, like that question, it's a hard one because of Aaron Rodgers and because of what happened this season. So, firing them didn't make any sense in terms of who Rodgers came to play for these guys. And what are you going to do now? Let him hire the next head coach and GM? Because that's really the only thing you could do. You're not bringing in guys that he doesn't like, because that's going to be a recipe for disaster. So, I think those guys, they got a mulligan when Rodgers went down. I think we all knew it watching the team all year, as frustrated as Jets fans are with their records and things like that. So I think Woody was in the same boat. I think Woody looked at it and said, quarterback play is what's holding this team back. And they tried, they brought in Rodgers and he got hurt. So I think, talking to Woody, that was the sense I got, was he knows this team needs better quarterback play is really the key to turning this thing around. I mean, the defense was number 3 overall. The special teams are really good. They just haven't fixed the offense. And that starts with quarterback. Obviously, offensive line is also a huge issue. But I think in Woody's mind, if they can get a healthy Aaron Rodgers, they're going to be a lot better in 2024 with Robert Saleh and Joe Douglas.
Do you think he'll actually say, hey, it's a playoff mandate, or he's going to try and talk around that when he does speak?
I think he'll talk around it. I mean, if he says that now, then in 3 years when we press that again, I've never done a playoff mandate. He can't do that, right? So he can't set the precedent. And I get it. He shouldn't say it publicly. We all know there's a playoff mandate. I mean, unless some crazy thing happened where they went 11-5 and missed the playoffs or something, right? Like then I think any reasonable person would say, all right, they can be brought back. But everyone knows going into this year that jobs are on the line.
To me, I understand why Woody made the decision he did. I get it. I am, though, really surprised that to this point, I guess the only staff change we've heard about is Taylor Embry, the running back coach. Are you surprised, at least to this point, maybe you're hearing some things you could share with the audience, that the Jets have retained Keith Carter, Todd Downing? Obviously, we know why Hackett is back. I get that. Yep. But are you surprised of the quote-unquote lack of staff changes to this point?
Not totally, because look, Keith Carter and Todd Downing were solid guys. He wanted them bad last year. Even if Mike LaFleur had stayed, those two were coming in. That was his grand plan last year of helping the offense. So obviously the Keith Carter stuff has been rough, after the season with the stuff on social media. But, I think they recognize he probably has to change his style a little bit. I'm going to guess he's probably been spoken to about softening his style, and be a little more player friendly. In terms of other things, I keep hearing there could be some things coming down the pike offensively. And I don't necessarily think they're subtractions, but maybe more additions. But no one's really saying what they are. so I'm not positive how big they'll be or how small they'll be. I don't get a sense it's going to be huge, but I do think they're talking to some people about adding someone. And then Taylor Embry, his contract was up. So it's not like they were you're fired because the running backs have been terrible. I think his contract was up and they were all right, can we do better? Can we upgrade that position? And they really want Deuce Staley, but he's talking to Cleveland still. I think we'll find out probably in the next few days whether Deuce Staley's coming. I think the Jets want him to make a decision, and then if he chooses Cleveland, we'll see where they go. The thing, Jake, is the coaching cycle has slowed this year because of what they're doing with the head coaches, right? So I think in the next week or so, you're going to see a lot more activity in terms of when these head coaches get hired. I think there's a lot of people probably waiting to see if their guy is going to get hired as a head coach, they'll go with him, or do they have to find somewhere else to go? So I think we're a little delayed this year in the coaching cycle, but I think in the next week it's going to pick up.
When it comes to Keith Carter, because he certainly has been the guy that a lot of Jet fans have focused in on, given, as you alluded to, the social media stuff. I mean, with a guy like Mekhi Becton, who is a free agent, Mekhi was one of the people on social media who took a shot at Keith Carter. Is that burning a bridge if the Jets were to consider bringing back Mekhi on a one-year prove-it deal, those type of things?
No, I don't think so. I don't think it was that bad. I don't think there's any chance Mekhi's back. I mean, I never say never, so there's a 1% chance, but I think Mekhi knows he's gone. And I don't think he'll be back. The one I was surprised at was Breece Hall, right? Because he's not going anywhere, and it's not his position coach either. So what are you doing? I kind of thought that was a bad look by Breece, who is not a bad guy and has been really good in the locker room. I'm like, this wasn't smart. Some of these guys, it's put your phones down, man. They just get into trouble. So yeah, I didn't think, I think Mekhi knows he's not going to be back. So I didn't think that was a big deal with him.
As far as the offensive line goes, Brian, I mean, I look at this team and I think they have two starters that you feel comfortable with, and Joe Tippmann at center and whatever they decide to do with Elijah Vera Tucker, even coming off the injury. How do you view this O-line? How do you think, more importantly, Joe Douglas views the job he has to do to try and fix this O-line this offseason?
Yeah, I think he'd agree with you. I think I think he would say Tippmann and AVT are the guys. I think they need to find two starters, probably combination free agency and draft, right? I don't think you want two rookie starters. That's tough. So I think they'll probably find, obviously I think they're going to go left tackle at number 10, whoever that is. So I think you go there. I think you try to find a good player in free agency who's either a right tackle or a guard. And I think whatever you don't find, AVT goes to the other one. Like that's sort of how I would do it. I think he's good at both right tackle or either guard spot. So if there's a good tackle that you like in free agency, I put AVT at guard. If there's a good guard in free agency, I put AVT at tackle. I think that's what I would do. And then the fifth spot, Jake, is I think you can kind of patchwork it. I think you can live with one spot on the offensive line that is a Xavier Newman or one of these guys we saw filling in, or Carter Warren. If you want him, put him at guard, something like that. I don't think you need 5 like solid, starters. I think you need 4. And because like you look at, I always hear from Jets fans about like guys who went elsewhere. Brandon Shell left and he had a pretty good career after he left the Jets. Greg Van Roten's in Las Vegas doing well. Kelvin Beachum. It's like, yeah, those guys they're all fine. You can't have 4 or 5 of those guys on your offensive line. And that's where the Jets have run into trouble. They've had too many sort of second tier offensive linemen. I think you can, the fifth position you sort of live in, or Laken Tomlinson, Jake too. I don't think he's definitely gone. I think, they'd have to rework his contract and he'd probably have to take a pay cut to stay, but he could be back too.
What are you hearing in regards to some of the in-house free agents the Jets have? You mentioned Mekhi, how you don't think he's back, but how about some of the other guys that the Jets could look to retain?
Yeah, I haven't heard much chatter yet, Jake. That'll start next week, right? That's like I said, it's quiet right now. I'm sure next week I'll have a better feel for that stuff. But obviously Huff is the priority. He's the big one, and I think they'll try hard to sign Bryce Huff. He's a tough valuation for me. I can't find anyone who could tell me who's the comp for him and where does he land, in his annual average value, because I think his agents are probably going to ask for a ton. I would, right? He's a double-digit sacks. He's young. I would be asking for a lot of money. The Jets just drafted the same position in the first round in the last 2 years. So I think it's going to be a tough one, but I think he's a priority. And then after him, to me, it's the special teams guys. D brings Zerline and, Zerline and Morstead have to be back in my eyes. You got to figure that out. We've seen the Jets screw that up before, letting good, Jason Myers get out of the building. So those are the big ones to me. Like Jordan Whitehead's an interesting one. It all comes down to like the price and what else is out there, I think.
Is Ashton Davis someone you could see the Jets wanting to bring back?
Yeah, definitely. I think Boyer will push for him. He's a really good special teams player. He had some good moments on defense. Ashton, again, what's he going to be asking for? I think on a reasonable contract, when your contract, you bring him back, or maybe 2 years. Like it's just, he reminds me of Eric Smith, right? You remember Eric Smith back in the day? Really good special teams player, like really good, like makes a lot of plays on special teams. And then like when he's like a 200 snap a year guy on defense, it's like, wow, like he's pretty, like this guy makes interceptions and recovers fumbles and, is in on the safety. You don't want him to play 1,000 snaps, right? And that's where like the Jets made that mistake with Eric Smith. I can't remember what year it was, 2012, I think. Like let's make him
year in 2011. I still have nightmares about that game.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. He's on the let's make him a starter. And it was like, no, like he's not a 1,000 snap a year guy. And so with Ashton, I think if he's reasonable about what he wants contract wise, I could see them bringing him back as a prime special teams guy. And he's fine as a backup safety, third safety. That he's fine in that role.
I got to ask you about Zach Wilson. I have not been a fan of him as far as on the field. Seems like a nice kid. You're around him all the time. Kind of a 2-part question for you. One, what was your experience like covering Zach specifically this past year compared to the other years where he was entrenched as the guy compared to what happened this year? And then 2, what is his future, if there is any future at all, with the Jets?
Yeah, I mean, I thought Zach matured a little bit this year. It's tough, right? Like his rookie year was COVID, so we weren't around him. Like we were not in the locker room in his rookie year. It was all, I can't remember now. The years kind of blend together. If we were able to do like press conferences with him, but we weren't in the locker room that year. So wasn't around a lot. And then he never really engaged with us in terms of like the beat writers and stuff. I don't think anyone really had a really strong relationship with him. Not that it was bad, but like he just didn't really, he wasn't a media guy. But I talked to him a few times this year more, and I thought he was maturing this year. I thought last year kind of humbled him. 2022, I mean, that experience humbled him. In terms of his future, I don't think he has a future with the Jets. I think they'll be looking to trade him. I think that starts next week in Mobile. I think Joe Douglas will be putting out feelers of anyone that wants him. I think, I've been all along. I have a hard time seeing a team wanting to trade for Zach Wilson. But people keep telling me, oh no, they'll get a day 3 pick for him. That's what you get for like a first round pick that doesn't work out. We'll see. And then I think the question is, like, when do they cut the cord, right? Do they run it all the way up to the draft and try to move him? If they don't get anything done in the next month or month and a half, do they wait till the draft, or do they cut ties with him sooner? Do you want a situation where the offseason program starts and he's telling him to stay away, like that kind of stuff? It will come up, but to me, there's no way he's going to be on the team in 2024.
As far as the backup position goes, that's obviously one of the biggest decisions that the Jets are going to have to make. There's just no way they're going to make the same mistake again with Rodgers coming off the injury. Who are the guys that you're potentially hearing could be fits for the Jets, and how aggressive do you think they're going to be right away in trying to fix the backup spot on, when free agency does start in March?
Yeah, I think it's the guys, I think Jacoby Brissett, I think Gardner Minshew, I think Ryan Tannehill, Tyrod Taylor. I think they're going to kick the tires on all these guys. I think Brissett is the guy that's in the front of my mind because I think they liked him a lot, and then they saw what he did to them on Christmas Eve. And I do think that leaves an impression, and they're like, wow, look at this guy, right? So, I think they'll be aggressive. I think next to wide receiver, backup quarterback is probably the free agent priority. Obviously, I think the offensive line, they're going to be leaning more towards the draft to get the offensive line fixed, but I think they'll be aggressive pretty early on in free agency. Backup quarterbacks don't always go the first day of free agency, but I think it'll be early. They'll get something done and find someone, and then I think they'll look to add a developmental quarterback either late in the draft, or as an undrafted free agent, they'll add a third guy just to kind of to be there to develop, because they don't really have anyone in the pike right now.
As far as receiver goes, obviously the big name connected to the Jets had been Devontae Adams. Do you think with the Raiders making Antonio Pierce the permanent head coach there, it lessens the possibility of an Adams to the Jets deal?
I do. I think, obviously Adams was vocal in supporting Pierce, so I think that's part of it. And then, Mark Davis giving the job to Antonio Pierce means he likes what he saw at the end of the season. I don't think they're going to, and they just hired Tom Telesco. I don't think they're going to be looking at the job in Vegas and saying, all right, we have to tear this down to the studs and rebuild this whole thing. I think they're going to think, if we can get a better quarterback in here and, a couple other pieces, maybe on defense, right? They have Max Crosby and not a whole lot else on defense. I think they're going to think we can win right away. So I don't think they're going to be trading Devontae now.
Who could be a guy they look to go after in free agency? How aggressive do you think the Jets are going to be on trying to find a receiver opposite Garrett Wilson?
I think they'll be very aggressive, Jake. The question to me is who makes it to free agency. That's always the question. Does T. Higgins really get to free agency? It's hard to envision that, because he's a good player. He's a young player, right? Free agency. I mean, I don't have to tell Jets fans about free agency. And I say this to your friend Jake Brown all the time.
Oh, yeah.
There's a reason that players become free agents. Good player, really, really good players usually don't hit free agency. It's very rare. And so, Cincinnati is a little bit of a different place in terms of how they operate. And they also have a lot of good young stars there that they have to pay. So maybe Higgins slips out because they feel like, all right, we can't pay him. That's an example of a good free agency. That's a good one to go after. So if he makes it, I think they go after him hard. Mike Evans obviously is another one. Are the Bucks going to let him go? He's older. He scares me a little bit more than T. Higgins just because of his age, but he's been very productive still. So, but Alan Lazard was the top wide receiver in free agency last year. How'd that work out? So it's dangerous. It's dangerous territory. It's like you look at the free agents the Jets have signed in the recent years, And really, DJ Reed is the best one. And I don't know how many Jets fans knew DJ Reed before they signed him. I certainly didn't know much about him, but when they signed him. Tyler Conklin's another good example. I didn't know much about Tyler Conklin. Like it's usually, it's not the big names usually in free agency that work out. So, but I think they'll be very aggressive in terms of finding the number 2 receiver when free agency starts.
What are your thoughts on Calvin Ridley? Because I've heard you talk about this in previous podcasts. Is he a guy that the Jets could be in on?
I need to check back in with people on Ridley because my information is from a few years ago. Like when it was clear he was out in Atlanta, and I don't remember the timeline now because he was suspended and all that stuff. But like, remember he ended that year. He didn't play in Atlanta for a while. Like he had problems, and nothing related to gambling. It was something, I think his mental health. He took some time away. So it was clear the Falcons were going to move on from him. And I asked around that year, and people were like concerned about him coming to New York. They felt like if he was having trouble playing in Atlanta with the scrutiny there, like how he would not handle New York very well. So they were not very interested in him. And then he ended up getting traded to Jacksonville and the gambling stuff and all that. So maybe they feel different a few years later, but I don't know. I don't think Ridley, they weren't high on him a few years ago. So we'll see if that's changed. Is
there a trade they can make? Like, could Douglas go full McCagnon and find his Brandon Marshall for, maybe not a 5th round pick, but is there a deal that we're not thinking of at that spot?
Maybe, but like the hard part with that, Jake, is because we're not thinking of it, right? Like nobody knew Brandon Marshall was available until all of a sudden that day. No one knew Tyreek Hill was available until that day. Like those things come out of nowhere. Like you don't see those coming. So yeah, it's definitely possible. I mean, like wide receiver is a position where trades happen. We can pull out a bunch of examples where teams traded, Stephon Diggs got traded. Like wide receivers tend to be a pain in the ass. and they'll, so somebody might go on social media and pop off on social media on March 9th, and maybe the Jets can pounce on March 10th to get them, So yeah, that's definitely a possibility because that position is volatile.
A couple questions about Aaron Rodgers for you. So as far as him still being a very good quarterback in 2024, what is your confidence level on him returning to form next season?
So, look, there's 2 levels of that, right? Like Aaron Rodgers, is he going to be MVP Aaron Rodgers? I'm not sure, right? He's a few years removed from that. He's got the injury, but I think even slightly below that, Aaron Rodgers is better than any quarterbacking we've witnessed with the Jets since – what do you want to say, Chad? I don't know. Like pick a quarterback that you like. But I think like everyone was like, oh, he had a down year in 2022. He threw 26 touchdowns. Like there's like 4 guys in Jets history that have thrown that many touchdowns. So I still think he can do it. The stories about him in practice at the end of the year, he looked good. It's not. You don't put a ton of stock in that, but like, look, this guy has done it for a long time at a high level. I think he's going to be highly motivated coming back. So I wouldn't bet against them. And even if it's not 2020, 21 Aaron Rodgers, you'll still take a step down from that and you'll be fine.
What was it like covering him, Brian? What were your expectations? And then as far as your experience, I know it obviously ended abruptly, but he was still around the building at the end of the year. You guys had a chance to speak with him a couple times. What was your experience like covering Aaron Rodgers?
Yeah, a lot different than I expected, obviously, because I didn't get to see him play. And he wasn't around, for the, 2 months after the injury. He really wasn't around. And then he started, I can't even remember when he came back, but he was in the locker room. Obviously, the last month he was there practicing. He's one of these players that's like a lightning rod. I covered the Yankees in a past life, and the other A-Rod was like this, right? Alex Rodriguez, everything he did was news. People felt very strongly about him, and that's how Aaron is. Like everything he says and does obviously draws a big response. So it's interesting covering a guy like that. The interactions I had with him were good. I think he's a very thoughtful guy. He gives really good answers in press conferences. I had a few times to chat with him at his locker off the record, and he was engaging, and it was fun to I talked football with him a few times. It's he's obviously a genius when it comes to football. And so, the thing that stood out to me most, Jake, I was not on the beat when Favre was here, but I ended up covering the last 2 months of that season because our beat writer got sick. And I ended up covering it. And So I was around the locker room that year a lot. And Favre basically was never there. It felt like Favre was a hired gun, and you knew he was going to be gone at the end of the season. And I've covered some other guys that have come in here that are sort of like that, not quarterbacks, but other positions. Aaron would like sit at his locker and like hold court. And like Breece Hall was right by his locker. There's a bunch of defensive linemen right there. JFM, Quentin Jefferson was there. Dwayne Brown was there. He would sit there and like just hang out with those guys. And I would see him interact with like some younger players like Chris Glazer. I saw him interact with a few times. Guys were like the last day, guys were coming over to him, like asking him to sign stuff, I'm sure to give to people. And like he's engaged, like he's in this thing. This isn't I don't think he's thinking of this as like just a stop along the way to retirement. Like I do think he's very engaged with the team, and like the whole offseason kind of told you that. But even after he got hurt, I thought he still remained a big part of the team.
Do you think he gets a bad rap from people in the national media? I mean, he got criticism for winning an inspirational player award that was voted on by his own teammates, for crying out loud. Like, I get it. He's a polarizing guy, whether you agree with him politically or not, or his vaccine stuff. I get all that. Not everyone is going to sing Kumbaya for Rodgers, but I think at times some of the criticism he faces is way over the top, considering what he's been like since he's been a Jet. To me, he's been a model citizen watching from afar.
Yeah, the inspirational thing, I that stunned me. I didn't understand like people making jokes about that. Like he was. It's not about, and again, this isn't about politics or his vaccine stance. Like this was about what the Jets saw him doing in the building. Like he worked his ass off, And the other one that struck me, Jake, that I was shocked at the reaction to is when he announced he wasn't going to return, like that Tuesday on McAfee, and people were like, he never was going to come back. Like if the Jets had won the game in Atlanta, the game against Atlanta, and maybe one other game along the way, like I think he would have been back. I think he would have come back. He wasn't going to be 100%. He knew that, but I think he would have tried to play at 80% or whatever he was. And I think he would have done that. Like that was real. So yeah, he brings a lot of it upon himself, Jake, because he goes on Pat McAfee and he says things that are going to be divisive. I don't think he needs to talk as much as he does about, but that's his right to do it. He's certainly, within his rights to talk about anything. But so I think the criticism, a lot of it comes from that. I think, some of the stuff at the end of his time in Green Bay rubbed people the wrong way, where he was like, is he going to stay? Is he going to go? But I've enjoyed talking to him and being around him. And he's definitely a lightning rod.
As far as the like big story of the offseason, Brian, that I've yet to ask you about, and that of course is the Jets jerseys, because I've heard some rumblings from some people that the Jets plan to make the legacy jerseys permanent now that the 5-year rule is up. I know Chris Johnson actually told what my buddy Sack Exchange of the Jet Lounge that was his intention at the Hall of Fame ceremony last summer. Are you hearing anything in regards to that? Is there anything you've heard on your end in regards to the Jets making permanent jersey changes now that 5-year rule is up?
Yeah, I think that's coming, Jake. I haven't heard anything definitive, but I've heard rumblings going back to the summer. The person who oversaw the jersey change in 2019 is no longer with the organization. It really hasn't been since 2019. So
that's very Jet-like, by the way.
So I think, the other people that are now in charge, I don't think anyone really loved these jerseys, that they didn't fall in love with them. And obviously there's been some bad football played in them. So I think some version of the legacy jersey will probably be introduced. My guess would be March, April, right? They got to do it before the draft, because you need all the merchandise to sell draft night, right? Whatever tackle you take, they're going to want to sell his jersey that night. So, I think you'll hear something in the coming months, but I haven't heard anything definitive yet. I think I saw the current merchandise was knocked down the price, right? So that's a good sign. They don't usually give discounts on stuff.
Yeah, no doubt. And I know, Chris Johnson, like he literally said to someone I know, hey, don't blame me for the jerseys. Like, you're going to like the new ones coming. And because my friend was telling him how much he loves the legacy jerseys, and he was basically implying that's where they're going.
everyone loved those legacy jerseys too. Like, I remember the players, the coaches, like that week one when like that Wednesday we went out to practice and they had the helmets, and like the players were so like they love those helmets and stuff. So yeah, I definitely think that's coming. I hopefully they don't have a big thing in New York again with JB Smoove. That's all I'd ask.
Before we wrap up here, Kaz, I got to go down memory lane with you. So I'm going to play a clip, and I want your reaction to what you were thinking in real time when this classic moment happened when you were on the fan with Joe Beningo.
Is Adam Gase coaching his team 3 years from now? I want you absolutely. What do you think?
No shot.
I don't think so. No. I mean, the way this is right now, how can I expect that?
What was going through your mind as Joe B, who I've gotten a chance to know over the last couple of years, that him and I went to the Jets-Giants game together, and that was quite the experience this year. What was going through your mind when that classic moment was happening?
I was just trying to survive on the air, I think. But yeah, that was 2019. It was Gase's first year. And that was like everyone wanted him fired after 7 games or whatever it was, which was ridiculous. And I'm not sure I was defending Gase as much as I was saying it was stupid to talk about firing a coach after 7 games. And then he asked me, is he going to be here in 3 years? Like, there's no way he's going to be here in 3 years when everyone wanted him fired, 5 games into his first season. He would have to won a Super Bowl to be here in 3 years. And, that roster was horrendous. The 2019 was better than 20, but still it wasn't good. So I knew that wasn't going to happen. What's funny though, like looking back on that, is because I at the time was like, no one fires a coach in their first season, right? Or after and like since then, it's become like a big thing. Yeah. Like Urban Meyer got fired in the first season, right? Nate Hackett got fired in his first season, and then Frank Reich got fired in his first season. Like it is now a thing. So like if it was now, I probably wouldn't be as defensive as I was at the time. But back then, I remember looking it up. Like there had hardly been any coaches ever fired during their first season. Some of them had quit, but it was a rare thing. But now it's become commonplace. But yeah, it's that I remember when Joe was retiring and they asked me like what was the most memorable appearance with him, and I said that one, when he screamed, because that thing went viral then too, of him screaming. So I had a lot of fun with Joe.
This one is for First Day Jets. I wanted to ask you about it, but this is a funny way of putting it. Kaz, talk about your top rope leg drop on the fraudulent Prez, Jamal Adams. So those who don't know the backstory, Jamal went after Conor Hughes of SNY on social media, and you basically took to Conor's defense and said some things about Jamal Adams being fraudulent around the Jets. Yeah.
Like, look, Jamal, what he said about Conor was just inexcusable about Conor's wife, I should say, right? Like, there's certain lines you don't cross with covering people. Like, I would never talk about anyone's spouse, a player's spouse or a coach's spouse, never. And that should be afforded back to us. Like, our families aren't part of this. Like, with Jamal, I said what I said. I always thought he was a phony. I thought he was a kind of a fake leader with the Jets. What stood out to me always with Jamal was the end of the 18 season. We were in New England, and he gave his impassioned, like, we need dogs speech. We need these dogs. And he was standing in the locker room with 50 guys who had just played their hardest against the New England Patriots and Tom Brady. And he was basically saying, these guys aren't good enough. All right. You want to think that, go ahead. If you want to say that privately to McCagnon or whatever, but like, I thought that was poor form by him. And just, there was a lot of stuff with Jamal and the whole trade deadline in 2019, that stuff, the way he handled that was terrible. And, he wanted to get out of the Jets, and he acted like he was, stunned that they were trying to trade him. But, like what he said about me, like Mr. Potato Head and that stuff, like, that's fine. I don't care about that. Like that stuff that's fair game. Call me names. I don't care. But the thing with Conor where it really bothered me, you don't do that to somebody's wife.
And Conor had like the entire Jet fan base coming to his defense, which was pretty.
I saw someone say, like, what if I had told you, in 2018 that Jamal would be beefing with Conor and Kaz and we'd be on their side?
I mean, I got to give you credit, Kaz, because, You had the Jets before the year going 8-9, and I remember reading that, and I was like, "No way, stop it!" Like
Yeah,
I'm not listening, and they ended up being worse. So you know what?
Yeah.
Like, I gotta just expect the worst now moving forward because this year really did damage to me as a Jet fan. I mean, it was brutal.
Yeah, there was like that. I took a lot of heat about that prediction, but I didn't. I never thought Rodgers was going to go down in week 1, but I did think Rodgers wouldn't make it through 17 games. I thought something would happen, and Jake, that the offensive line in the summer, like I was really concerned about the offensive line going into the season. The practice in South Carolina was jarring. Like I don't think people people thought maybe we exaggerated that or whatever, but like they walked off that field that day, and I talked to people in the organization that were like panicked about the offensive line. And now Dwayne Brown, and then they were like, "Oh, Dwayne Brown's coming back. That'll solve everything." And it's like, okay, he's 38 years old, and he didn't, he's playing with one arm last year. So that was kind of where the 8-9 came from for me. We'll see where we go this year, but yeah, I never thought Rodgers was going to go on week 1 though. But I did think there would be some point where they were going to have to play without him. And, then the offensive line, I thought the second version of the offensive line this year was actually pretty good before AVT went down, that one. And I think if they could have held that together, they might have done better. But then it's funny, AVT going down 2 years in a row really sunk the offense.
It's truly unbelievable. Before we wrap up, Kaz, I was thinking about this. So, everyone talks about the playoff drought the Jets have been on. I mean, you became the full-time beat reporter in 2011.
Don't bring that up, Jake. Don't bring that up.
Is it fair to blame you for the reason why the Jets have not made the playoffs? Because before you joined the beat full-time, they were going to the AFC Championship games back-to-back years.
Yeah. I told the story before. Like, I had a job offer from another organization in 2011, and my boss was like, "Well, what if we give you the Jets beat? Would you stay?" Like, "Oh, it's, Rex, Sanchez, like they're going to championship games. Like this is going to be a great young team to cover for years to come." And yeah, that was that little did I know that what I was signing up for. But yeah, no, I actually told Rodgers that I, they haven't been in the playoffs, and I've since I've been on the beat. We're gonna end that. We're gonna end that. So we'll see.
Favorite player to cover since you've been on the beat? Favorite head coach that you've covered since you've been on the beat?
Ooh, that's good. Josh McCown is my favorite player. Josh just got it. Just was like, he was really good dealing with us and treated you like a human being. Just a really, really good guy. Oh, favorite coach. Rex definitely provided the most headlines. So there was that. I've gotten along with all of them that I've covered pretty well. I think Gase is probably the most misunderstood, and to me, still misunderstood. Like he's a really good guy, and he's a nice guy, and I think fans like got a completely skewed view of him. Happy to see Todd doing well now in Tampa Bay. I thought, the hard part, Jake, and I've had this conversation a lot recently about Saleh. One thing I feel like my view has changed in 13 years is it's much more about players than coaches, right? Much more. And I tease some of these coaches. I'm like, you get paid all this money. If people only knew, it's hard to be a good coach with bad players. And much of the time I've been around the Jets, the rosters have been bad and the coaches get blamed. And I'm kind of like, huh? Like what are they supposed to do with these players that they have? So I think that's I look at it and I don't think, good coaches can even win with bad players. I think bad coaches can win with good players. So it's much more about players to me. But it would be hard for me to pick a favorite coach because I've enjoyed covering all of them. But Rex definitely was the best one in terms of my job for sure.
Makes sense why he's a big star on ESPN now. So,
well, Rex was great with we always had a joke where you get to a point in training camp where you've written everyone, right? You've written a story about every guy that matters. You've written every angle, and you're just like, oh my God, get me to the regular season so something happens. That's usually August 25th, let's say, right? Even the preseason games might be over. we used to always joke, like, all right, time to ask Rex where the defense is going to finish this year. So it'd be like, we'd always, every year at the end, always like, Rex, where do you think this defense is going to like rank this year? We're going to be the best defense in football. You know what I think? Like every year, Rex would say that, and would be a headline in a story that got you through the end of training camp.
I mean, I as a Jet fan, I hope when they ask about the defense this year, I know like the 86 Bears comment from DJ Reed, I think was taken out of context big time, but like, I just hope the Jets just kind of don't say a whole lot this time around and just try and keep the expectations as low as they possibly can.
It's interesting, Jake. I think, I haven't talked to a lot of players about this, but other people, like I've talked to some coaches and front office people. I think the Jets realize things got a little out of hand last year over the summer with Hard Knocks and everything. Like, I think they would love to be like under the radar this year and not being picked as the team, right? Like there's a lot of people that they were kind of the darlings, of people picking for Super Bowl, and that I think they'd love to go in being ranked 15th in the power rankings this year, and no one's really talking about them. We'll see if they can achieve. I don't think they can achieve that with Aaron Rodgers in the building, but it's not going to be as crazy as this year. The Hard Knocks won't be there and all that stuff, but I do think they would love a much quieter run up to the season this year.
It sounds like, based on our conversation here as we wrap up, Brian, it sounds like you're not as negative on the Jets' chances of being a good team next year as maybe a lot in the fan base are. Because I can tell you, talking about this team every day, people despise the head coach now. They are completely soured on Joe Douglas, and all that optimism and excitement. I know eventually we'll get there, I'm sure, but this is the most down the fan base has been, I think, in quite some time, because there's so little faith in this regime to get it right, even with Rodgers.
Yeah, which kind of surprises me, Jake, right? Because I would argue, if I was talking to them, like, do you like the defense? Defense is pretty good, right? Special teams, pretty good. Like they got to figure out the offense. And if they get Rodgers back, that's a big step in fixing the offense. Like they're going to be better with Aaron Rodgers. Now they got to find a number 2 receiver and find a few offensive linemen. And that's easier said than done, I know. But to me, the line I used for years was like the Jets offseason, it was a Noah's Ark offseason. They needed 2 of everything, right? I can remember like a few years ago thinking they had Quinnen Williams and CJ Mosley and nothing else. And like they basically needed everything else on the team. So they're in a much better place now to me. So yeah, I probably am more optimistic than some Jets fans, and I think they'll get there. It's just the season just ended. It's once they sign some free agents, Jake, and they draft somebody, everybody will be back excited again.
So we're not predicting 8-9. We're going. Dare I say we go 10-7?
Let me see what the team looks like first. It's January. I'll tell you in August. Let me see what they do.
We'll get you back on during the free agent run, and we'll see if the vibes are a little different then. Kaz, I can't thank you enough, man. I know you've always joined me on the radio show over the years, but first time here on YouTube, and you were great. So thanks so much for a couple minutes this morning and chopping it up, talking Jets.
No problem. Thanks for having me, Jake.
He's Brian Costello from the New York Post. Check him out. His podcast, Gang's All Here. Him and Jake Brown do an excellent job covering the team, and obviously you can read his work, as I mentioned, in the New York Post. I'm going to stay on for 15 minutes or so. I'll open up the hotline here. We'll read some of your super chats as well. Great job there with Brian Costello coming on the show this morning. And if you're tuning in late, reminder, weekly Wednesday segment with the Buffalo Jet Fan is live today at 6 p.m. Eastern time. Appreciate everyone watching. Before we open it up to some super chats and we take some calls on the Gusbuster Umbrella hotline, let's pause to talk all about Underdog Fantasy.
Do you want to make money making picks on NFL games? Then you have to try Underdog Fantasy, the easiest place to play fantasy sports. It's also the fastest growing fantasy app in the industry. With Underdog Fantasy's Pick'em game, you pick between 2 to 5 players and select whether they'll go higher or lower on one of their stacks. You can win up to 20 times your money in a single game. What I love about Underdog is how easy it is to use their app and website. You can also pick between players on your other favorite sports like baseball, basketball, and hockey. Visit UnderdogFantasy.com or find them in the App Store. And don't forget to register with my promo code ASMAN. That's ASMAN to get your first deposit doubled up to $100. That's promo code ASMAN at UnderdogFantasy.com. Must be 18 plus and present in a state where Underdog operates. Terms apply. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-522-4700 or visit ncpgambling.org.
I'm laughing at the first comment I see here from our guy King Lowski. That damn child won't be back. I don't think there'll be any Jet fan happier when Zach Wilson's not on the team than King Lowski. My God. I can't blame him. Can't blame him. Dom with a super chat starts us off. Heard you say it last night. You're 100% right. ... Neighbors. Look, if Malik Neighbors is there at 10, I think there's a chance the Jets would take him. It's going to depend on what offensive linemen are there, but Neighbors to me is special, and I wouldn't kill the Jets if they took him at 10. I prefer a tackle. I'd prefer them to hopefully solve receiver and free agency or a trade. You heard Kaz make a good point. Who's this year's Tyreek Hill that gets traded? Or Brandon Marshall, Jet fans? A.J. Brown. Like, receivers get traded. Stephon Diggs. We've seen receiver trades. Jets are in position to make that deal this year and then use the 10th pick on alignment. Maurice writes, good morning, Jake and fellow Jet fans. I feel like I've been in a self-imposed shadow round banishment for being away for so long. I'm back. Maurice, welcome back. Shout out to First State Jets. Became a channel member during the show with Kaz, and we asked Kaz about the Jamal Adams incident that First State Jets wrote in on. Neil, I want you to know I see your super chat. Don't worry, it's in the works. So don't worry, you're covered there. And let's get to some calls. Scott, you're first up this morning. What's up, Scott?
Hey, brother. A lot of things. You know, everyone looks at we need this, we need that, but what are you actually giving up to get it? Do we recoup our second round pick we don't have? Like you said, the linemen, if you have 1-2 guys that you like, but like you said, 8-9 deep from Jeremiah, the guys that do the draft, Kuiper, do you feel comfortable with those guys? Because he's got to start, like you said, plug and play. This guy has to do it or else. How much time are you going to give Aaron Rodgers? And you look around the league, can you run the ball a little bit? Who's a run blocker? What technique does use? Can he pick up the language? You got to find a lot of guys quick. That's kind of scary. And what do you think? I mean, the timing of things, we know we need the line, and we need like 8-9 deep. You need like a Pittman. You need number 2 receiver. Got to have him. Not a 1A, 1B guy that can just play. Ridley, fine. A tight end, if he's available, do you move down in the slot like you said? The guys that might want to move up for a quarterback, get that pick. But somebody you pick at 10, and you mentioned it, and I agree. He's got to play and be an integral part down the season and playoffs. Not right now, but he's got to do it. You agree?
Yeah,
so your pick at 10.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes without saying, if the Jets go into the draft and there's still a void at tackle on this roster, they're using the 10th pick on alignment, and they got to hit on that pick. Now, I don't know if there'll be an obvious void. They might sign a left tackle in free agency and say AVT's the right tackle until they see what happens in the draft. I think Costello is right. I think after the draft, you know what position AVT's playing. I think he's spot on. That being said, I'm still team trade down, but it's easier to talk about trading down than to actually do it. You need a team that wants to trade up. I keep going back to the fact that Daniel Jeremiah had 9 offensive linemen going round 1, 7 of them being true tackles. Kuiper had 8 tackles going round 1 in his mock. That tells me it is a loaded tackle class. So if the Jets can move down a couple spots and still get a second-round pick and take a tackle, and then maybe receiver in the second round and interior lineman in the third round, that to me is more valuable than maybe pick 10 on a tackle and third-round pick on a receiver or a lineman. But if they love Olu Fashanu and he's there at 10 and he's their left tackle of the future, boom, you take him. You can't complain about it. So I think there's a lot of questions there that won't be answered until we actually get to the draft and see what the board looks like. King Lowski with a super chat. Jake, how likely is T. Higgins coming to the Jets? I think if he hits the market, you heard Costello say the Jets are going to be ultra aggressive in trying to get him. Is he going to hit the market? I happen to think he will because of the comments Jamar Chase made about being the highest paid receiver ever. They've already paid Burrow. Cincinnati's not known for being big spenders. I think Higgins does hit the market, but the Jets are going to have competition for him. Buffalo needs a receiver. Kansas City needs a receiver. Houston needs a receiver potentially. There's going to be competition. More of your calls right now. Let's go to Southern Jet. Rich is on the line. What's up, Rich?
Hey, Jake. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Not bad. Before I get to the question I was going to ask Brian if he had opened it up, but I think we're seeing a small shift. The NFL is cycles. We're seeing a small shift back to the pocket quarterback, and I think that's why we're seeing offensive linemen who protect becoming more important, and we're seeing more emphasis like we did in the old days. I think there's been a shift back to that. But then the questions I was going to ask Brian is, what do we think inside Florham Park's halls? The political nuance would be if Lazard becomes a WR4 based on draft and free agency, and Hackett never called a play for Rodgers. LaFleur did. And what would be big deal? We go out and we sign a play caller and let Hackett fulfill the same role he did in Green Bay. So what do you think? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, Lazard being receiver 4, I don't think would have any drastic impact. If he plays well, he'll get more opportunities. Lazard's got to treat next year like he's an undrafted rookie free agent again, and he's got to earn the right to be on the field. That's the mentality he's got to play with. Otherwise, he'll be cut after the year, and he'll never get another big contract, right? Like, then no one's going to sign him for anything more than $2 or $3 million. That's where he'll be in his career if he doesn't have a good season with the Jets next year. And as far as Hackett, I mean, we know Rodgers is going to change all the plays at the line anyway and call his own offense. So
highest audible percent the last 10 years I read.
Yeah. So, I mean, it worked with Peyton Manning. It worked with Brady. So you just got to hope that Rodgers is those guys, which he, from a, resume standpoint, he's one of those all-time greats. It's just about him staying healthy, and I think this offense will be effective with him.
Do you think they'd bring anybody in to call plays? That was my political question.
Yeah, not to call plays, but it does sound like, thank God, they're trying to add someone to the offensive staff. You heard Kaz say that.
Yeah, just sit next to Hackett in the booth and kick him in the nuts when he makes a stupid call and change it or something. That's done in a lot of teams' booths, and so I don't know who it'll be, but and again, finally, what I had said was, well, first of all, that was a great interview you did with Brian, but the offensive line shift, I think, is directly correlated to going back to more of the WCO and the pocket quarterbacks.
Yeah, I think C.J. Stroud probably has a lot to do with that, right? I mean, that's why I think there's going to be a demand for Michael Penix by the time we get to April, because say whatever you want about his injury history. You talk about like the best thrower of the football in the draft class. I think it's him from the pocket. Like, I think he's deadly accurate. He's probably the most NFL ready, thrower from the pocket. Not the best athlete, but just best pure pocket passer. Look, I hope we see that, Rich. The more demand for quarterbacks, in my opinion, the better if you want to trade down and get a haul for moving back.
Oh, yeah. I thought, it'd be wonderful to see a poll maybe done by you down the road about what percentage of your followers, want to trade down or stick at 10 if there's an offensive tackle. That's because you could miss you could miss X offensive tackle, trade down, and still get a decent one, because it's all crapshoot. Still get a decent one, and maybe then be able to, in that trade, move up into the bottom of the second from third and pick up a Tez Walker, wide receiver.
Yeah, I'm with you. To me, and look, obviously, if the Jets nail pick 10 with Fashanu and he's great, ignore this. Like, obviously, they made the right choice. But if
Right.
we all agree the draft's a crapshoot, why wouldn't you move down, get a second-round pick, still take a tackle you like, and have a tackle, second-round pick for a receiver or maybe another lineman, who knows, and then third-round pick on another lineman or a receiver, like whatever you didn't do in round 2. Like, that to me is a better haul than tackle at 10, receiver or offensive lineman in the third round. Knowing the Jets will take a defensive end in the third round, it will drive us crazy. So,
And
like,
we don't
I
need a
know.
tight end.
Yeah.
We don't need a tight end. Jesus, I'm sick
I
of
don't.
that.
Look, Brock Bowers is an awesome talent. Let someone else take that risk, not the Jets.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, what the heck? Conklin is good, and when Ruckert's been in, he's shown that he can get yacked. Ohio State didn't use him, in that way. We've got 2 very good tight ends.
I know. Look, the Jets made their luxury pick last year with McDonald. They don't get to do it 2 years in a row.
Well, again, great interview with Brian, and have a great day, guys.
You too, Rich. Always good to hear from you, my friend. We got to hear from your son out in Germany. We need another call from him. Keep rolling with your calls. If you got a super chat, we'll read it, which is why I'll read this one from the Arthur Smith Truther. Bang Mateo. By the way, Bang, if the Jets hired Arthur Smith to their staff, that would be a great hire. Sign me up for that as an offensive senior level coach. You got the Downing and Keith Carter connection from the Titans. Why not bring in Arthur Smith? Bang writes in, AR would prefer a veteran left tackle than a rookie offensive tackle experiment. I think, you know what Aaron Rodgers prefers, Bang? A really good left tackle. That's what he wants. You can't sit here and tell me that if the Jets took a left tackle that was a rookie and they played great, Rodgers wouldn't be cool with it. If they drafted Olu Fashanu, who, according to Conor Rodgers, is the best tackle in this draft at pass protection, you don't think Rodgers would be excited about that? We saw Breece Hall still be able to be an unbelievable running back with a crap O-line. So if the only knock on Fashanu is his run blocking is not great right away, but he's an excellent pass protector, that's the guy I want. Would I prefer Tyron Smith in free agency? Yeah, I'll roll the dice on him because when he plays, he's a top 5 tackle. I know he only played 13 games last year, but he's never missed any playoff games. Like, I'm okay with that strategy maybe, but it's hard to find good linemen in free agency. It just is. So pick 10, I still think is going to be used on a lineman. And the way Cods talked about it, he almost made it sound like it's a foregone conclusion. Pick 10 is going to be an offensive tackle. Jay Maggs, shout out to our guy Jay. But really, the real star of the Maggs family is the wonderful Mia, his wife. Is AVT one injury away from being Becton 2.0? How does Keith Carter still have a job? It's like a bad dream. P.S. Your Texan show house is baller. Thank you, Jay. As far as Keith Carter, I don't know. You heard Kaz make an interesting point that he believes the Jets, a.k.a. I'm sure Saleh and company, have spoken to Carter about softening his coaching style. That was an interesting takeaway from the interview with Kaz. I don't know why he still has a job. I don't. But you heard Kaz say that was Saleh's guy, which doesn't exactly make me feel great about Saleh if that's the guy he's banging the table for, right? And is AVT an injury away from being Becton? Yeah, I mean, I guess the difference with Vera Tucker versus Becton is Vera Tucker played like an all-pro when he was out there. Becton was good as a rookie, and then we never saw that ability again this past year. He was okay before the ankle sprain, and then he was terrible. Whereas AVT, when he's played, has been really, really good. And he's actually played into seasons, whereas Becton got hurt week 1 in 2021 in the first half, missed the entire season, basically. And he got hurt in August of 2022, so he missed the entire 2022 season. So it's a little different, but there's obviously some similarities there. One more injury, yeah, then he is Becton. I happen to think AVT will be okay. These have just been fluke injuries, but he's got to prove he could stay healthy. He's still a major key to this offensive line, there's no doubt. Major, major key to this O-line unit. And ultimately, sometimes just health is a big reason for having a good O-line. Like the Bills didn't have any injuries on their O-line this year. How insane is that stat? They have the same 5 guys play every game. Imagine that, Jet fans. Continuity on the O-line, what? I got some insane O-line stats that I read in Rich Cimini's story on ESPN.com today. 37 different combinations in the last 67 games. which is dead last in the NFL. No second contracts for a draft pick since Brian Winters in 2013. Since 2020, the Jets ranked 29th in sacks allowed, 26th in pass block win rate, 20th in yards per rush, 32nd in run block win rate. The Jets haven't started the same 5 linemen for more than 8 consecutive games over their past 67 games. And they have rushed for at least 155 yards in back-to-back games only once. 7 players this year started at right guard. I should have said not safe for work or cover your ears if you have children around you or in the car. That's how bad those stats are. I mean, good God. Don't be a meatball. Hit the like button, says Cartman. Spot on. Spot on. I mean, look. The O-line situation, it's been a horror show. And it will continue to be a horror show if this GM doesn't get his act together.
It's time for another V-Man call. Hopefully you're not sleeping. Ay, caramba.
Here's V-Man. Hello, V-Man.
Hi, Jake. What's up? I agree with you, man. This offensive line, it's been a mess. Like, it is funny, to think, for years, like, pretty much from, 97 to 2011, the Jets' strength was always their offensive line. It's amazing how it completely falls apart.
I mean, I saw an interesting question posed on Twitter the other day. It was, you could replace anyone on your current team with someone else, but that player you replace them with takes over the player that's currently on your team at that position. For example, if the 49ers replaced Brock Purdy with Joe Montana, Brock Purdy's off the team. Joe Montana is your quarterback, right? So I was thinking, well, who would I do that with the Jets? And I was thinking about some of the best players in Jets history. Curtis Martin, well, that wouldn't be the best value because you have Brees. Sauce Gardner with Revis. Well, you don't need to do that because Sauce is obviously an all-pro, unbelievable player.
And also you could do it. It's like Don Maynard. No, but you already got Garrett Wilson.
Right. So you know what the answer was for me? It was
I got it. You're replacing Mekhi Becton with either Winston Hill or DeBrickashaw Ferguson.
Boom. And I'm glad you mentioned Winston Hill because he's in the Hall of Fame. That's the historian in you, V-Man. But yeah, I would replace the left tackle with either Winston Hill or DeBrickashaw, right? So it's like, I mean, that's how dire it is for the Jets on the offensive line.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I agree. It's like, man, but like I said, the thing that's got me more confident for this offseason is, like I said, that having a coach at the Senior Bowl, there's going to be a lot of talent there that you can probably maybe some guys are going to be some late round. Maybe you can find some guys who are going to end up being late round gems that are going to be helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. I mean, the advantage the Jets have having Obrick coach some of these O-linemen up close, that's, to me, a big deal.
Absolutely. And like I said, I think this is going to be the best year for the Jets. They have, like, this offseason is vital, not just because this is going to be not just because you only have one fewer year with Aaron Rodgers. Now this is what you got, what was it, 2 years left with Aaron Rodgers, most likely? Or has he said he's going to play 3 more?
Well, he has said he wants to play several more years. I think the Jets got to look at it like you're all in for this year to earn the right to get 2025 if Rodgers is still playing at a high level and this regime's going to come back for another run at it. You know what I mean? Like, you expect to have him for 2, but you got to treat it like you only have him for 1 if you're Joe Douglas.
Exactly. And it's not just having him, but then it's also, let's be honest, this is probably going to be the last year with Jeff Ulbrich as DC. So you have no idea what's going to happen to his defense after he's gone. Like, he has done a fantastic job transforming this Jets defense into one of the finest units in football. And so like I said, he's going to get a head coaching job next year. There's no doubt in my mind about it. So you have to make the most of it. You have to make most of the 2024 season, because there's no telling what happens to the defense after he leaves.
It's time for another V-Man call. Hopefully you're not sleeping. Ay, caramba.
Top 3 V-Man call right there. knowledgeable, on point, succinct. V-Man, well done. Even the comment section saying that was a great V-Man call. That's what you want, V-Man. You brought it today. Well done. As far as Ulbrich goes, I think if Jeff Ulbrich's a head coach a year from now, that means the Jets had an outstanding season. Because no one's hiring a coach from a 7-10 team, even if we all understand Jeff Ulbrich's done a really good job. If the Jets go out there and they're 10-7 next year and they're in the playoffs, Jeff Ulbrich, I think, gets a head coaching job. Or he's certainly in the mix to get one. It's hard as a defensive coach to get a job. But we definitely could see it. We definitely could see it. You know, it's funny. I was thinking about that question that went on social media about replacing a current player with an all-time great. You could do Nick Mangold for center, but Joe Tippmann's really good. Could I play Tippmann, though, at left guard? So I could get Mangold at center, AVT at right guard, and I have the best interior offensive line in the NFL. Draft the tackle at 10. Sign Tyron Smith, and let's roll. I mean, not bad. Just an idea, though. Just an idea. All right, I want to thank everyone who tuned into the show. If you tuned in late, check out the beginning of the program. We had Brian Costello from the New York Post on with us for about 45 minutes, talking about some of the things he's hearing about the coaching staff, some of the free agent targets, some of the in-house free agents the Jets have, who's a priority for them to bring back. So definitely check that out if you tuned in late. I want to thank everyone on Patreon who continues to support the show. If you guys sign up for my Patreon, you get bonus perks. You also get access to the Discord channel. You get bonus shows that are not on YouTube. Additionally, you get access to our Super Bowl Squares contest, where we're giving away premium tickets to a Jet home game for the winner, as well as quarterly prizes for the Super Bowl that include a Jets jersey of your choice, some autographed merchandise, gift cards to Copper John's, a Gusbuster umbrella with your name engraved on the handle, and some other fun things as well. And that, you go to patreon.com/Jake Asman Show. Sign up. It's just $5 a month, but you do save 15% when you sign up for the year. Thanks again to everyone for your continuous support. My name is Jake Asman. This has been the Jake Asman Show. And a reminder, we're live again today at 6 p.m. Eastern Time with the Buffalo Jet fans. So be on the lookout for that, and I'll talk to you guys then. See everybody. Have a great day.
Hey, Robert, thanks for taking my question. With Zach starting again Sunday, does he have any compromising photos of you or someone else in the organization?
No, that's a fair question, Jake. I'm going to take the fifth on that one.
What the hell is this going backwards bullshit? You don't go backwards. You throw the ball out of bounds with your big goddamn arm, and you go back in the fucking huddle.
No, that's a fair question, Neil.
This is bullshit.
Jose Feliciano, the blind Puerto Rican guitarist, can see that he is terrible.
This kid does not want to run with the ball.
Are you kidding me? This is the shit I'm talking about. You bitch's ass. You did his ass on my damn field.
No, that's a fair question, King.
The third damn year we are seeing this in Naptown.
He's not trying to win the goddamn game.
You gotta be kidding me. Send his ass the fuck down.
I could have made 20 yards with that goddamn hole.
If your quarterback cannot play in the NFL, they get rid of him.
Oh, there's one of his 27-second throws. Oh, it's amazing. I don't give a shit.
If you cannot play football, get your ass off the field.
And walk around and wipe Rodgers' ass because that's all you're good for.
And you're sitting here defending this bullshit.
If I see Zach Wilson go on that field, me and Lowski are going out personally, and we're going to take his ass off the field.
It is torture, man.
God damn it.
All right, thanks, guys.
Little Victor Cruz dance. Oh, Victor. Woo. I'm doing a little salsa, baby. Yeah.